TikTok was like, I was in the 0.05 top percent of Chipotle eaters all year. And she ate like 30 pounds of rice or something.
Hello. Hi guys, welcome back to our podcast.
Hello.
Today we're going to be discussing when we're starting a training program. Recently, something that's come up particularly with some of my clients is a level of guilt or remorse around starting to set boundaries and rules with your dogs. Lately, we've had some people that are pretty apprehensive when starting the training program, and particularly with implementing some Ecollar corrections or corrections into their training lifestyle.
I think it can be very difficult for an owner to like navigate the weird drama of like the training world and how there's so much push for obviously like just positive reinforcement based training strictly, and kind of the moral superiority that community uses a lot to kind of further its agenda of like, if you correct your dog, that makes you a bad person type of thing. They really come at it from that angle. It's, to me, in that community, it's very human focused. They say it's dog focused, but I perceive it as very human focused because it's very much about like, feel good. Yeah, it's like about you feeling good, ultimately. You know, of course, like nobody wants to correct your dog.
Right.
If I could train dogs using purely positive reinforcement-based methods, like everyone would do that.
Yeah.
Like even the most recent podcast with, I'll probably reference this a lot, with Ivan Balabanov and Susan Garrett. Ivan Balabanov is like a world-renowned dog trainer, very successful, 40 plus years of dog training. And Susan Garrett is also a very successful reinforcement-based trainer. She's got a lot of titles, championships in agility, more so. And they did a podcast, which was pretty fascinating and interesting to listen to. But a lot of the things that Susan talks about in that is that she feels like balanced training limits the human in the trainer. And it doesn't allow you to grow because you use those tools as like a crutch, essentially. And if you didn't have those tools, you'd be forced to think outside of the box and figure out like other ways to do things. Which I always just, I mean, when I initially heard that, I was like, why can't you have both? Just because I use balanced methods and because I use training tools doesn't mean I'm then incapable of still furthering my experience and my knowledge on how to use reinforcement in training. And so I think that it is very like human focused, like it limits the human, it makes you feel good, things like that. When in reality, it's like the dog is lacking a whole other side of communication, of just knowing exactly what you want from them. Yeah. Whether it's, I use reinforcement to teach you what I do want, but I'm also going to use punishment to teach you what I don't want. And I think that that's a very big piece of the conversation that's getting ignored, is that sure, we could maybe accomplish a lot with purely reinforcement-based training, but at what cost along the way? Yeah. How long is too long before we say, okay, like the time limit is up, this dog needs success somewhere? Yeah. Like I personally think of like my old dog that I adopted, Maggot, who her name was Maggot. She was a crusty old lady, okay? I adopted her when she was like, they're like, she's either 10 or 12. I was like, with old dogs, that's a big difference. Yes. But I got her. Ultimately, she only lived with me for about 1.5 years before she passed, sadly. But because I did balanced training methods with her, she was off leash for 2/3 of that time that she was with me. She was swimming. She was hiking with my dogs. She was living the best life that little lady could have ever hoped for. And I guarantee you, with the prey drive that this Jack Russell mix had, there's no way I could have had her off leash using positive reinforcement only in 1.5 years that I had left with her. You know? So it's like, for me, the reward, like the pros of using balanced training with her highly outweighed the cons. And I think it does for most dogs.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, how long are we gonna, like, try and, like, hopefully figure it out before we just say, like, this clearly isn't working. Like, we need to do something else.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's kind of one thing that we always talk about is, I feel like the balance training, it is just a lot faster generally because as opposed to just doing positive reinforcement, because you're able to get your point across a lot more, right?
Yeah.
With being able to use the tools that we have to, again, like you were saying, tell them what we like to do, but then also tell them what we don't want them to do. And I find that I get a lot of clients as well that, you know, they don't want to hurt their dog and they feel bad for their dog and all this stuff, and I get it, right? So, Sully's my baby, you know. I would never want to hurt him, but if it comes to the point of giving a consequence where I'm able to do so appropriately and understandably, then obviously I'm going to do that, right? If that's a matter of him wandering in the street for whatever reason, whatever it may be, you know, then it's something that I like having that whatever tool available, I guess. So I think it's something that it's a hard hump to get over for some people, especially those people that really love their dogs and see them a little bit maybe more than a dog. But I, you know, the biggest thing is just trying to practice and understand the reason why we use it, you know,
I think
appropriately.
for, like, a lot of people, it's less about the e-collar and more about the fact that they've just been told that you just shouldn't train your dog this way and that it's going to destroy your relationship.
Yeah.
You know, there's going to be all this behavioral fallout and there's going to be all the blah, 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 you know? And it's just, like, a shame.
You mean like the personality changes?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh, my dog will never be the same and
It's-
they'll hate me and all this
Exactly,
stuff.
yeah.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
It's impossible.
Yeah.
It'd be impossible to do that.
Yeah, it's like,
Well,
sure,
if
that
you
could
use
happen
it
if
incorrectly,
you're abusive.
you know.
Like, of course that could happen. Or there's a way with, like, parents and kids where it's like, parents have to give kids, like, discipline,
Yeah.
right? And if it's done properly and in a way that makes sense and it's fair, that is a vital piece of growing up and being able to become a functional adult in society.
Right.
Like, if your parents make you live in a bubble and they, like, don't allow you to experience stress or pressure or discipline or consequences, when you hit the real world, it is alarming.
Yes.
Because, like, nobody gives a shit about you.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, they're not your parents.
Right.
They're not blinded with love for you. They don't care.
Nobody cares.
They're not here to
Nobody
teach you a
cares
lesson.
about you.
Yeah.
And the same way that, like, your dog needs to be able to function safely in society, because that car that's going down the street at 40 miles per hour doesn't care about your dog when they run into the street. Like, there's just
Not a whole lot they can
unavoidable
do
things.
sometimes either, you know. But
Exactly. And, like, for me, like, I live a lifestyle with my dogs where I want them to be as free as they possibly can.
Yeah.
I want them to live as the most fulfilled life that they could possibly live. And to me, I can only achieve that with balance training.
Yeah.
I say that with 100% confidence.
Yeah.
At least in
Because
a way
they
that
know the
makes me
consequences.
feel comfortable and safe.
Yeah.
And I guarantee you my dogs would choose that every time.
Of course, yeah.
If they could talk to me, I have no doubt in my mind that Lumos would be like, dude, please correct me for running away if that means that then we can go off-leash hiking. Like, he would pick that over anything else. Like, imagine the sheltered life that Lumos would have had to live if I didn't do balance training.
It take on so much more of a management aspect, where Zach George, who's a huge positive only force free trainer, said, where balance trainers correct, I manage, or
Yeah.
I would not want to live a life limiting my dog because of how I felt in regards to giving one or two corrections
Yeah.
with a proper e-collar introduction and training program.
Yeah. And how exhausting.
Yes.
How exhausting.
That's what I mean. That's just the time span of having to do that. Like,
Yeah.
you don't have the time for that. Your dog doesn't have the time for that,
Yeah.
right? It's like
How exhausting. Like, I remember in the Ivan and Susan podcast, Susan was going through this whole convoluted thing about how, like, and I don't dislike Susan Garrett. I think that she's clearly a very knowledgeable, successful reinforcement-based trainer. And I do listen to her podcast, and I've taken some of her like techniques that she does into my own toolbox that I use with dogs. But something she was talking about was how, she has a dog that was obsessed with water and things like that. And essentially was saying, like, if the dog got in the water, she knew it would be impossible to recall the dog out. So Sunday morning before church, she's in the pond in her church clothes, pulling this dog out of the water, and fully admitting that I used forceful methods because I had to get the dog out of the water. So what is the difference between shit hitting the fan and you're forced to use force with your dog because you have no other option, because you didn't manage correctly, because it's impossible to manage correctly 100% of the time.
Yeah, human error is gonna come up.
And dogs are living, breathing beings with minds of their own, and so they're not fully predictable all the time. So she's like, yes, and I had to use force in that situation, and then moving forward, I had to go back down these layers, and then I had to change this reinforcement schedule, and I had to do this, and literally Ivan was like, that just sounds so taxing.
Yeah.
Like, how exhausting.
Like, behavior to dogs is, like Susan says, is information. It's not bad and it's not good. They're not performing behaviors thinking like, oh, I'm gonna be good, or I'm gonna jump into the lake because I wanna be bad.
Yeah, they don't know that.
Yeah.
They don't think like that, and if I have the opportunity to pinpoint the behaviors I don't wanna see for my dog and teach them that that's a behavior that's undesirable, have a consequence attached to that, I can really reward the good behaviors and have like a dog go and be able to go swimming or go into the pond with that solid recall, so we're living the best of both worlds at that point.
Again,
Well,
giving them the freedom.
Exactly, because she even admitted, we were talking about this, Bridget, that she blatantly admits, she's like, if I was an Ecollar trainer, one of my dogs would have been off leash on my property years before this dog was able to be. Like, to me, I'm just not willing to sacrifice that. Like, I'm just not willing to. She also admitted in the podcast, which I thought was fascinating, that if a dog is trained well with balance training or with positive reinforcement training, she said you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. Then what's the point?
Yeah.
Right.
Truly, what's the point? She said, because I think Ivan asked her, he's like, would you be able to look at a dog and pinpoint how they were trained? And she said, if they were trained well using balanced methods, I don't think I would be able to tell the difference. Well, then there's your proof.
And I think
it doesn't destroy dogs.
I think the thing about the balance training too is, the e-collar does have such a bad rep about it or whatever, but we're using positive reinforcement as much as possible. So it's like you were saying, like there obviously is a difference in the sense that we're using the e-collar, right? And we're using the tools and they're using like the reinforcement, but it's something where we're still trying to use as much as we can, but we're speeding up the process so much more by just being like, instead of trying to lure them over with all this positive reinforcement, it's just, hey, stop doing that.
Just
now come
feedback.
over here and do the good thing, right? It's just like,
just clear feedback.
Right.
Yeah, wouldn't you want somebody like to give you feedback and let you know you're doing something wrong, then to continue to allow you to do the wrong thing and then get furious with you or have passive aggressive moments with you.
Right.
Builds a lot of resentment in your dog
and a lot of frustration.
Yeah.
For the owners. So it's something that I think just and I've had a lot of clients and even close friends and relatives that have fears of giving corrections and doing all this stuff with their dogs, punishing them, giving consequences, but obviously there's a line, right? There's an appropriate way to use the e-collar and there's an inappropriate way. So if you use it appropriate, like you're saying, then it's something where it might be, you might feel guilty or worried maybe that your dog's going to hate you or resent you or whatever, be scared of you, but it's just simply not true. Like it's something where it's just
the biggest
used appropriately.
The biggest fallout that can happen from an e-collar is just confusion.
Yeah.
If you don't know what you're doing.
And if you don't use it appropriately.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, which honestly, there's an equal amount of confusion using reinforcement-based methods and negative punishment a lot of the time.
If not more.
You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
just a different version of it.
Mhm.
So I think on either side, if you're not being clear and concise in how you're training and setting your dog up for success, of course there's going to be confusion, you know? Like with, I think I sent you, or I had you watch this video I stumbled on the other day, and there was a girl talking about how she stopped using balanced training with her dog and instead went to reinforcement-based methods, and her reasoning was because she was like, she pulled out this like spectrum on a whiteboard, and she said that like as the dog's threshold went down, the dog stopped responding to like food, and then it was like wouldn't respond to like enforcement cues, like reinforcement cues, like the yes cue or something for food, and then it would eventually get to where the dog would respond to commands because the dog knew if they didn't listen to a command there would be a punishment for it. And she said, and so I ended up living in this space with my dog where I was doing a lot of commands and corrections because she was constantly being forced like over her threshold essentially. And I think I commented and I was like, this isn't about balanced training, it's about just bad training.
Yeah, it's
that
not
has
a tool.
nothing. Yeah, that has
Tools
nothing
to
to
train a
do
dog.
with. That's just if that is happening, then you're not reading your dog well,
Yeah.
and you're not setting them up for success.
There's
If you're
definitely
constantly
confusion.
pushing them over threshold, like,
Yeah.
and there's no clear communication. Like, what were your punishments? Because if your dog was constantly over threshold and you were constantly correcting, either your punishments meant nothing to the dog, so you're just nagging the dog at that point. Like, what was going on? You know, it was just like very weird to me. And so then we got into this whole dialogue about it, and she's like, you know, so basically, like, if you're saying that you shouldn't force the dog over threshold with balance training, what's the difference then between reinforcement-based and balance training? And I said, ultimately, I don't think there's a whole lot of a difference between reinforcement-based and good balance training. The only difference is that when it really comes down to it, I'm willing to set a clear boundary with my dog. Right? If I can train. Exactly. Like if I'm not going to purposefully continually put a dog in situations where they're going to fail over and over and over again.
And then be like,
something
it's
is
the
going
tool,
wrong.
It's the Ecollar that caused my dog to fail. It's like,
Exactly.
You know, your information just
Well, and
wasn't
this
good enough.
isn't to be confused, because I can see people saying I'm hypocritical because of the last podcast we talked about how I said I want my dogs to make a bad choice off leash so that I can correct them. This isn't the same thing that I'm talking about, because if in that situation, that context, my dogs are fully trained, they know exactly what to do, they're making an active choice to do something wrong.
We're not
And
teaching.
and that correction is just setting a clear boundary for them, and then they never make the mistake again. What I'm talking about in this context is in a learning capacity. I always tell all of my clients, 85% of your sessions should be successful. If you're having to do a lot of corrections when you're just working on basic obedience or things like that, then something is going wrong. You're either in an environment that your dog is not ready to be in, you're either holding them to a standard of proficiency that they're not at yet. You know, we need to evaluate something, because when the dog is learning, there really shouldn't be a lot of failures. For me, those bigger corrections, or corrections in general, are reserved a lot of times for the very end proofing stages, where we just need to make it clear, concise, that is a choice that is off limits, and then they're like, oh, okay. Because they've had all the knowledge built up back here to fall back on them and know exactly what to do and how to recover from it.
So another thing that I find a lot of owners struggle with, at least in the board and trains, I'm curious to see how you guys handle
Working through it, but with going up on our levels with
Sure.
with corrections, so in the send homes, when we are giving those consequences and stuff, obviously after the board and train, they're seeing their owners, they're getting all hyped up and everything, so we're as we start working through commands, they're more interested in their parents. They just want to keep saying hi and all this stuff. And I think it's hard for the owners sometimes to have to work up to higher levels, where we're able to have that motivating level, right?
Sure.
They like to go lower because they feel bad, but I'm curious to see how you guys work through it, because for me it's a point of we're not addressing the issue. 2, we're probably correcting a lot more than we would probably have to if we just go up a little bit more, even 10 or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
And it's something that I think once I can get that point across, because at that point it's no longer they're scared to do it, they're just scared to go up.
Yeah.
You know, and so
Yeah.
I'm curious to kind of see how you guys deal with it in the one-on-ones. Is there a lot? Do you see that a lot, or is
Honestly,
it matter
I
just
don't
nipping
see
it in
that
the
a
butt?
ton
Yeah.
because the owners are there the whole time.
Yeah.
I think it's harder when you're doing a send home because the dog's like, I haven't seen you in 10 years.
Yeah.
I'm gonna lose my mind.
Right.
You know, so I think it is more difficult to work through because the dog's brain is very much preoccupied on just being with the owner.
Yeah.
And also the owner's just happy to see their dog. So
Yeah.
half the time I always felt like when I was doing send homes it was just like just in and out. You know,
Mhm.
all the information I was giving them is just hard for them to grasp. So I honestly feel like in those situations, like, you want to get the owners like on board with doing what they need to do, but I also do think that sometimes, obviously that first week the dog is home, we're not having them do anything crazy like
Yeah.
off leash or anything like that, so there is a lot more room to like wait on like the big distractions.
Mhm.
And so I think sometimes easing people into that,
Mhm.
you can wait a couple sessions, you know,
Yeah.
like some follow-ups of like, okay, you know, the dog's brain is a little bit more
Yeah.
cognizant at this point.
Yeah.
You're feeling a little bit more comfortable with getting your feet wet with the training.
Mhm.
Now let's kind of like take it up to the next level of like really
Yeah.
fine-tuning everything and
Yeah.
setting real clear boundaries.
Keeping it simple. Like I just shared a post the other day by OShea that said, like, by the time your dog is graduated from a board and train program, they know more than the owner.
Yeah.
They're schooled in it, they've put in the work, they know exactly what we're asking them. It's then shifting on the owner to enforce and hold their dog accountable, and it takes some time for you to learn that. It takes some time for you to manage your dog in your house, have them come back in, and they're going to start performing all those bad behaviors that they did before they came to the board and train. And it's our job to instruct owners, like, piece by piece, how do you address these things. So when I was doing send homes, I tried not to expect too much from the owner in the first week. We'd keep it really simple, send them home with some homework. Hey, work on your bed stays, get really comfortable with that. Let's not pick the dog up from the board and train and then go to Edgewater on a busy day and expect us to have the level of proficiency to manage the dog correctly in that
Yep.
situation.
Yeah, because we talked about it a little last time, like, you know, most of the success of that pairing is the owner being comfortable and knowing what to do, you know? Because, I could give my fully trained dogs to somebody who doesn't know anything about dog training, and my dogs are going to be like,
Yeah, they're gonna be like, wait, I got away with that?
Exactly.
And Mom never lets me get away with
Exactly, yeah. So, yeah, I think, and that's where I think it is, board and trains just inevitably have a little bit of a harder time initially, because the owner just is at such a deficiency knowledge-wise compared to the dog that it's like hard to catch them up as much as you would like them to be caught up to in that initial meeting. Whereas like with one-on-ones, like you can really piece by piece, like ease them into everything and give them all of the different steps and stuff.
And they have a week to work on the homework in between the sessions, and we have 10 hours together, so we have 10 weeks of giving them the next step. So we see it a little bit less, or when I was doing board and trains compared to now, I was seeing a little less confusion or resistance from the owners to go up, because we've kind of already had the foundation laid, and we're really dipping our toes in kind of slowly, getting them comfortable with the usage of the collar, and then helping them tackle some more of the bigger ticket.
Well, because a lot of the owners being willing to listen to you is they have to trust you. And they have to feel like you truly do have like the best for their dog.
Yeah,
in
best
mind.
interest.
You know, the best interest for that dog. And I I mean, it's just so hard to build that within like a 3-hour period when they pick
Yeah.
the dog up, you know?
Yep.
Because like by the time I'm getting to a point where we're even doing e-collar corrections, I'm almost like 3-4 lessons into the program. And so like they've spent a lot of time with me. You know, they see my dogs, they see how I interact with their dog, they see, you know, like all the troubleshooting we've done. We've
How their
emailed
dog has built a relationship with you.
Exactly.
Right.
So it's like when I tell them like what I would like them to do, and I, you know, give them homework that includes correcting the dog for certain things, like it's easier for them to trust me because there's already that rapport and that like relationship there.
You have to like, people that go to the board and train program and you're picking up, you have to allow yourself some time to readjust with your dog too. Allow yourself the time to learn yourself, give the dog some time to learn and work together. Because working together is relationship based, and if we've only had a relationship where the dog's pulling us down the street, pushing us, jumping on us, and is constantly like a take relationship, we have to work on balancing that relationship out, which can be really difficult for owners. So while the dog is doing the board and train here and they're fully trained, the owner has to put in the work at home. So never expect yourself to pick up a dog from a board and train and it to be perfect for the rest of its life. It's not how it works. Dogs aren't robots, and we can't program them into stopping a behavior. There's not a reset button. It's a living, breathing animal, and you can't make guarantees on dog training unless the owner is really proficient.
To me, like, and this analogy makes sense to me. I don't know how much it makes sense to other people, but like for me, a board and train is very much the same parallel as like you hire, say you work at a company and your company is going to start using a new program or system in their computers or whatever, and you hire reps to come out and teach you how to run that system. You're not writing the code, you're not building the system. That was done by them, right? They did all of that, but you have to know how to run it. Right? Like when we started using Ginger here, like Ginger was already a preset thing, right? And then when we started using it, we had to watch videos and take little classes and like figure out how everything works, or else it was of no use to us, you know, because we didn't know how to use it properly. So that's very much how a board and train is. It's like you skipped having to learn how to write computer code and how to build all of that, but you still have to be skilled and taught how to like use it and actually implement it. Otherwise, again, it's just going to be useless for you. It's not going to make any difference.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing with having to kind of struggle with the e-collar, or not even e-collar, but just enforcing, you know, these consequences, is the fact that, you know, the dog can get confused by it, and kind of what you were saying, it's just a matter of making them not confused, right? Trying to be a little bit more clear with how you're doing it, and I think that also comes with what I feel like I've said every podcast is ask questions, right? If your dog seems to be confused, or you, like you were saying earlier, you seem to be correcting more than you would like, or you think you need to, ask why, or you know, just try to do your homework and figure out what you need to do. The point of this balanced training is so that we can have the dog understand exactly what we want in what ways that we use it, but make it efficiently and effective as possible, right? And just being able to do that by asking the questions and by trying to help your dog understand what you want them to do is really what the purpose is, you know.
Finding a trainer that's willing to keep working with you and growing your dog, rather than you pay for the board and train and then you're out and you're at home and you have so many questions and you have nobody to talk to. You have to find a trainer that has really good reviews and that's able to help support and continue to grow your dog in the ways that you need your dog to grow.
Your trainer should never make you feel bad.
Or stupid, or...
If you're just like asking questions and trying to understand and clarifying things and stuff like that. There should never be a point where you feel like embarrassed to talk to your trainer, at least on their end. I'm sure there are some clients that show up and they're like, oh no, we didn't do anything this week, and they're embarrassed because of that. But like,
Yes.
I would never want someone to feel embarrassed because of like something I did. You know,
I'm
or
not
I
here to
interacted
judge
with
you.
them. Yeah, no, we don't own or shame around here. I always think of it as like if I'm struggling with an owner, like I'm always looking internally, like what can I possibly change? How else can I phrase this? How else can I show them? How else can, like, what do I need to do when I'm talking to you guys, like telling you about the situation, like trying to brainstorm ideas because. Yes, like unfortunately, inevitably, there was always going to be like the bad eggs where sometimes it's just a bad client, no matter what you do. But if you feel like you're consistently getting bad clients, maybe you need to reflect inwardly
You
for
can't
a little bit.
always blame somebody else, like, be like, oh, they don't do anything, or they're not putting their work in, be like, I have this person for an hour, what can we do within the hour to show them that their dog is capable of listening,
Yes.
and their dog is completely capable of learning?
Mhm.
How can we transcribe that to you getting the same results at home?
And if someone isn't comfortable doing the homework, that's on you.
Mm-hmm.
What have you not explained? What have you, like, what is it that they're like, it all comes back on the trainer a lot of the times.
Yeah, that's
Like-
why they're here.
Exactly.
They're here for our help.
Most people don't sign up and pay a pretty hefty amount for dog training to just sit there and not want to do it.
Yeah.
You know, most people.
Yeah.
So especially in like one-on-one sessions and stuff, like most of the time they want to do it, but if they're not doing it, then they must not see value in it, which means I didn't create the value in doing the homework in some way. So
Or maybe we made it too difficult for that person, and just like
Mhm.
things are going to be different from dog to dog sometimes.
Yeah.
Things are going to be different from different people. We get people from all walks of life,
Right.
dealing with all kinds of situations, and they have their own journey.
Yeah.
And you have to ask yourself, how can I break through to this person? How can I help them? What can I do to shift, make it easier if I need to, or have the person get comfortable with remaining more consistent in their training?
Mhm. That's such an important piece in opening up like the balance training world to people is allowing people to see the compassionate side of it. Like for me, like when we have a dog that comes in that is dangerous, like very dangerous to be around, and we get quite a number of those here. They seem to be more prevalent these days. I don't know what's going on out there, guys, but like to me, the compassionate thing is telling that dog to knock it off.
Yeah.
Knock them down, Peck.
Because like do you want to stay alive?
Yeah.
Because like this is at this point like a life or death situation.
Unfortunately, we don't have the time, as like Susan Garrett was saying, like it felt like a lot of blaming on her part, like, oh, you didn't reinforce this right. And unfortunately, with dogs of caliber of aggression that have the ability to hurt somebody, we don't have the luxury of time to mess around and give it treats and have it be open.
No.
And when dogs are in that state of mind, they don't want anything to do with your hot dogs, your chicken, your cut up steak.
Like, and I think I think sometimes people, and again, I think this is just an assumption on my part, but in like the reinforcement-based community, games are very prevalent, and games in dog training is great, it's very important. But I think what people miss is that like some dogs aren't playing games.
Yeah.
Like they're just not playing games. Like to them, like to the mindset that certain dogs get into is not, oh, I'm doing this because it's fun. They're doing it because they have an intention behind it.
Yeah.
And that intention sometimes is to cause harm. So trying to come at that was like, oh, how can I make this a game to try to like change this behavior? Like it's just incompatible. It's just not going to work.
Not like Michelle and I had a collaborative client recently, and that dog had some pretty gnarly issues.
Yes.
And it would be extremely difficult to really put that off when this person had been living within the means of their home for the last 2 or 3 years. So we're working on helping this person be able to get out into the world again, and we can't do that through purely positive reinforcement. It's just not going to happen.
No, it's not going to happen. And the amount of time that it would take to maybe make it happen.
In that time frame,
What,
look at all
like,
the management that has to go into that.
Exactly.
And the risk associated with that.
Exactly, the risk is so high, like, to try to manage a dog to that capacity. Like, some of, like, these dogs that we get in, like, I'm thinking of, like, Oakley. Like, this dog is
Oakley.
huge.
Yeah.
Huge. No one could hold that dog back if he wanted to do something.
No.
This dog is massive. Pure muscle, truly.
Yeah.
And the situations he's had with his bite record are terrifying. Like, he's like, you know, and so with something like that and the owner's situation and what they're in, like, there's no way you could ever convince me that using non-aversive methods and not using any type of, like, training tools, even like leash training, like, you're gonna put a harness on that dog, and I just, like, I couldn't even fathom, like, where would you even start to begin with a dog like that? And that's what I always come back to is, like, oh yeah, they just don't.
They euthanize or suggest
Medication.
euthanasia, medication, numb the dog out. In an Oakley setting, like, this dog was way more than they could handle at first when he first came in.
He's come a long way.
He's come a long way, and he's able to be handled. And what always drove me to help them is the love that they have for that dog. They cherish him.
They adore him.
They love him despite all his flaws, and it's so beautiful to be able to give them the resources to help better manage him.
Yeah.
And have a dog that they can enjoy 10 times more.
Well, I just had that Dutch Shepherd that I just finished up recently with Anna. She had 2 separate people, dog professionals, tell her to put that dog down. There is literally no reason that dog needed to be put down. None at all. And she was just, like, amazed. I mean, it's been years that dog was stuck in their house, crated when people came over. She would redirect on them when she would get aggressive. She would try to attack chainsaws, lawn mowers. Like, this is
That's
like,
a good idea.
yeah, like, she is like the real deal, right? And then, like, with people, like, the whole first lesson, she was launching herself at me, crazy, out of control. And of course, it was funny because towards the end of the sessions, the owner, she goes, "Now we know why you weren't phased, because you knew that this was, you know," she's like, "you knew that this was something that could easily be dealt with." But yeah, it's just so sad to me and like, just devastating that somebody would pick to euthanize a dog or heavily medicate them before just trying proper training methods with them, you know, and just setting boundaries.
Try to communicate what you actually want them to stop doing.
Yeah,
See
now,
if that
like,
helps first, and then.
yeah, like, me and Anna, like, Anna's, like, totally comfortable with me now.
Yeah.
She let me pick her up off of the bridge because she got stuck in the middle. She let me pick her up. She's excited to see me. She's like, I literally would have never thought that this dog could have bonded with anybody else. And, like, it's just so heartbreaking that, I mean, we get so many people like that.
Yeah.
That they're like,
Yeah, we do.
this is what I've been told to do with this dog. And it's so sad that before you would choose balanced training methods, you would choose something like that.
Yeah, and of course, behavior euthanasia, there is a time and place for it, and
Sure,
situationally. But I really like when owners explore other options.
Yeah.
And
Look into it as an option at least. Like,
Yeah.
if you're already thinking about euthanizing your dog, if you love your dog that much, why would you not at least put it into consideration?
Exactly.
Do your research, right? Like,
Yeah.
ask questions, like I always say, but
And
you know,
again,
they
it's
go
shame
from there.
is a heavy thing for people.
Yeah.
And it's like
Yeah.
the amount of shame that people get from others for using training tools with their dogs is unacceptable. Like, it is crazy to me. There's been multiple times I've been out in public with my dogs. Oh my gosh, your dogs are so well behaved. They're having such a good time. And then they see the e-collar and they go, oh, It's like, okay, so what? Are they not well behaved anymore?
Right.
Like, you would have never known they were trained with an e-collar
Yeah.
until you saw it, and now all of a sudden your whole perception has changed.
And that's another. That's that. You're right. That is probably the biggest thing. Is I feel like, especially if you get a more vocal dog too, people are always so scared to reinforce.
Yeah.
And but if you are there to help them, or if you give them that confidence to do it, and then they finally see the benefits, they're like, oh my gosh, why have I just been hesitating for so long? Like, why do I care so much about what other people think when I'm just trying to better my dog? And that's the one important thing I think a lot of people need to remember, is just remember you're doing this for your dog. You're not doing this for the people that are going to give you side eyes and give you shit and all this stuff.
Take your emotions out of it, because it's not about you.
Just
it's
remember
about
it's
your dog.
remember you're there, you're benefiting your dog, and that's really the purpose of why you're doing this.
Yep.
You know?
Do the hard things for your dog.
Yeah.
Yes.
And in the training process, you're gonna have times where it's really hard, and you have to get over that hump so you can have a really balanced life with your dog. And tools are a wonderful part of training, and you're nervous about it, you should go to a trainer that can fully answer any of the questions you have, and you should have questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I think we can end it with
It's our
Ivan's analogy, where he's like, if something better and more efficient comes out, you don't have to ban the old thing for people to do it.
Right.
We didn't have to ban flip phones when we got smartphones.
Mhm.
Everybody just said, oh, that's better, so I'm going to do that, right? Like, you shouldn't, if your methods of using no tools and reinforcement-based only and non-aversive are that much superior in results and efficiency, then we wouldn't have to ban e-collars and and choke chains or prong collars, because it would just work better. So we wouldn't need those anymore, right? Like, So, anywho, don't let other people make you feel guilty about what you do with your dog.
And ask the questions you want answers to.
Yep. And balance training is compassionate.
It is.
It's a very compassionate way to train. I think that people taking that step to recognize their dog needs help, more help than they've been getting, and being willing to do the hard things and set aside their own emotions and their own feelings and prioritize their dog is very, very respectable. And I think that shouldn't go
It's
unacknowledged.
kindness to your dog is to tell them no. You gotta tell them no. You gotta set those boundaries. That's love.
Yeah, honestly, that's the full spectrum of love. Reinforcing the things that you like and being clear and direct about the things that you don't like. Communication is very important.
Absolutely.
Cool. Thanks for hanging out today, guys.
Yeah.
We'll see
Hope
you
this
next
helps
time.
someone.
Yeah.
Keep
We'll
your
see you
head
next time.
hang in there, you know? You're doing the right thing.
Bye.